guys, I'm Heidi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do my February wrap-up. So these are all the books that I finished in English. I finished a couple of books in Estonian as well, but I think I'm going to group them together at some point and make another video in Estonian about them, so I won't talk about them here. But I am generally quite pleased with how my reading month turned out, because one of the books that I read was 1,000 pages long, so I am just going to go ahead and start with that one. So that book was The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. So the Stormlight Archive was the only Brandon Sanderson series that I hadn't yet read, so I just kind of decided to go for it, and I'm not even going to try and explain the sort of lore behind it, because there is quite a lot, and I'm sure that most of you know what is going on in those books anyway. But basically we follow three main characters. There's Kaladin, who is a young man and who is a former soldier turned slave. Then we follow Dalinar, who is a noble in this world, and he is having these visions, but everyone thinks he's insane or going insane. And then there's Shallan, who is a young girl whose family is sort of going through some financial difficulties, so she comes up with a very complicated plan to help her family's situation. And then there's this whole overarching mythology, and there's a lot of world building. So it's quite a big world that Sanderson has created, and I liked it, but I didn't think it was amazing. I have a weird relationship with Sanderson's books in general. I usually like them because they're, you know, quite fast-paced and fun, but I don't think they're amazing, and usually the writing is really not that great. So with this one, I thought the world building was interesting, but sort of every nation that wasn't the main one kind of blended into one in my head. I like the magic system. This is something that Sanderson usually does very well. He comes up with sort of creative or imaginative magic systems, and this was no exception. I liked some of the characters, and I couldn't stand others. So I really didn't like Shallan's character, and I feel like Sanderson is struggling in general to write sort of convincing female characters. Shallan's dialogue especially was so cringy, and I really didn't care about her arc at all. And I didn't really care about any of the fight scenes either. Usually I don't mind fight scenes in fantasy books, but these were just sort of like superheroes or overpowered superheroes slaughtering their enemies, and it was just that, and it really became boring after a while. But I mean, it was fun, and I didn't even mind the length too much, even though it was 1,000 pages. And I think this might be my new favorite Sanderson series, together with Wax and Wayne. So yeah, I think I'm definitely going to continue with this one at some point. I then finished reading A Foreign Country by Charles Cumming. So this is a spy thriller, and it was the February pick for the Genre Raiders book club. We follow a disgraced MI6 officer named Thomas, who is tasked with finding the first female chief of MI6 who has gone on vacation but disappeared. So Thomas has to figure out what has happened to her, and he kind of uncovers a bigger conspiracy. I really enjoyed it. If you're looking for a good spy thriller, then I would definitely recommend it. It was such a fun, entertaining read. I found the bits where Tom was conducting his spy work quite entertaining, and there were bits that were a bit unbelievable, and the characters weren't really that fleshed out. But I wasn't really bothered by any of this, because it was such an entertaining read, and I feel like I don't even want to analyze it in the same way that I would a literary fiction book. It was a fun read, and I don't usually pick up crime or thriller books and expect amazing character development. I pick them up to satisfy a craving I usually get for a fast-paced, plotty book. So yeah, I'm definitely going to continue with this series at some point. I then finished How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. So this is a sort of a sequel to the Folk of the Air trilogy by Holly Black. It reads a bit like a series of short stories, but they're all connected, and they are all centered on Carden, and his life before, during, and after the main trilogy. And it sort of reads like a collection of fairy tales, I guess. I'm not a huge fan of the main trilogy. I don't really care for stories about fairies in general, and I thought the main trilogy was just okay. I mean, it had all the YA tropes, but whatever. I mean, it wasn't terrible. With this book, I just felt like it was unnecessary. The stories themselves in this were okay, but there was really no reason for this to exist. I bought it because I really like beautiful books, and this one is illustrated, and it's definitely magical. There's these fairy tale creatures, and there are these beautiful illustrations, so if you like all of those things, and if you like Carden, then you will probably like this one. But it doesn't really add anything new to the series, and it was kind of boring. So yeah, I don't think I can actually recommend this to anyone, apart from like die-hard fans of the main trilogy. I then finished The Death of Francis Bacon by Max Porter, and I don't really even know how to describe this. It's a poetry collection, sort of. Francis Bacon, the painter, lies on his deathbed, and this is the author's attempt to put into writing the thoughts that might have gone through the artist's head. And it tries to capture the essence of the artist's paintings in words. All I can really say about this is that the language is beautiful, but I do think that prior knowledge about Francis Bacon's life and work is required to properly enjoy this. And I'm also currently reading a couple of books. So one of them is Luck in the Shadows by Lynn Flewelling. So I am taking part in a read-along that is hosted by Chris over at Chris Bookish Cauldron and Andy Smith. And they are hosting a read-along that they've called Skala Along. So basically what we do is that we read a book by Lynn Flewelling starting from March each month. So we began with the Night Runner series, so this is the first book in the Night Runner series, and then after we finish that, then we're going to be reading the Tamir Triad. So the read-along is going to be finished in December. And this is such a fun book. It's basically, it was written in the 90s, so it is a sort of it's got this older sort of fantasy book vibe to it. So in this one we follow two main characters. There is a young man named Alec, who is imprisoned for a crime that he didn't commit, but while he is in his cell, he meets Seregil, who is a spy and a rogue and a thief and just a very colorful character, and he sort of helps Alec escape from prison, and then they become friends, and then they sort of go on adventures together. I'm really enjoying this, and I would encourage anyone who likes fantasy to pick up this book as well and join Skala Along. And I'm also currently reading Priestdaddy by Patricia Lockwood. This is the March pick for the Genre Readers Book Club, and we're reading a memoir this month. It's basically about a woman who is kind of forced to move back in with her parents, so she takes her husband with her, and her father is a colorful character. He is a Catholic priest who got special permission from the Pope to become a Catholic priest, so he converted from I think he was Lutheran before, and then he converted, and then he got special permission to become a priest even though he was married and he had children. So it is sort of about the author's relationship with her father and sort of just the father's character. And I am very early on in this book. I've read maybe around 70-80 pages, and honestly, I'm not entirely sure if this book is for me. I'm not really, I don't really like the writing style much. It is genuinely funny at times, but it does feel like there has to be a joke or a punchline in absolutely every single sentence. So I'm not entirely sure if that kind of writing style is for me, but I'm not going to set it aside just yet. So I do feel like I'm still very early on in this book, so I think I'm going to continue with it for the time being and see if it improves for me, and if it doesn't, then I will set it aside. But I think I do want to continue reading it at this point. And I'm also currently reading Truth and Justice Part 2 by Anton, Hansen, Tammsaare. So this is the epic classic Estonian sort of book series, and I've wanted to pick up Part 2 for the longest time, so I am kind of slowly working my way through it. So this is essentially a school story. So the first part dealt with kind of like farm life and the sort of struggles that farmers at the end of the 19th century had, and it was very sort of character driven. It was very, very good. And then the second part is focused on one of the sons from that family who goes to Tartu, which is the second largest city in Estonia. He goes there to school, and then it's focused on sort of his experiences in the school. And again, it's very character driven and it's very philosophical. I would say that it's even more philosophical than the first book. It deals with very, very big themes such as, again, truth, justice, belief, kind of like sort of relationships between people. It's generally, it is a very sort of massive work of literature when it comes to Estonian literature anyway. So I am very much enjoying this. It's slow going, but I will definitely finish it at some point. So these were all the books that I wanted to talk about. I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!